Welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, the show designed to explore how you can step into powerful self-leadership and stop settling for less in your life, business, health, and wealth. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and as a certified energy practitioner, coach, and online business consultant with over a decade of experience, you can expect expansive, honest, and enlightening conversations about what it really takes to create the changes in your life and business that right now may just feel completely out of reach. Thank you for choosing to invest in yourself by listening to this episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. In today's episode, we are going to discuss how you can improve your home for a better work-life blend with my special guest, Jenny Quinlan. Jenny is the owner of Studio JQ, which is an interior design company based here in Wiltshire. Now, this conversation goes far, far beyond putting pretty cushions on your sofa and having nice fabrics in your house. This conversation covers the three key environments: your internal well-being, your home, and the world environment as a whole. And honestly, the depths that Jenny goes into in these three environments and giving you the ideas, the tips, the inspiration on how you can better enjoy your home and actually have it as somewhere that is a place of sanctuary, as a place that you love, that really represents you, and doing it in a way that feels good to you and works for you and your family or whoever's living in your space and environment. It's absolutely incredible. I am recording this literally straight after recording the episode, and I am buzzing with ideas. I have so many things I want to do around my home based on the advice that Jenny has given. And we also touch on something which was very new to me, something I wasn't aware of, called greenwashing, where companies are marketing their products as eco-friendly or sustainable, good for the environment. And actually, they're really not. There's a lot of greenwashing going on in the industry, and it's something for you to be aware of, even if you are looking at just purchasing a new tin of paint or looking at reupholstering an item of furniture. This episode is incredible. It's going to give you so much inspiration. And I really hope for those of you who are kind of like a little bit stuck in your house and just constantly working from home all the time and feeling a little bit like there's no switch off between the two, this episode is going to give you some inspiration and ideas to combat that as well. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Jenny, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, my love.
Hi, Heather. Nice to see you again. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm so looking forward to this conversation because we're recording this, for those of you when you're listening, we're recording this in June, and because the weather has finally got nice, I'm having so many conversations, even more than ever, with people who are just like, oh, my house, oh, my garden, I just want to get it tidy, I want to declutter, I want to do this, I want to do that, and half of them have no idea where to start. And so I am really looking forward to having this conversation, because I think especially since, and I'll be curious to know, we can start here because I'll be curious to know your experience of this since COVID and everyone sort of being stuck at home, working from home. For business owners like ourselves, it's not hugely out of the ordinary, but for those that were used to doing the commute every day and working from an office, to all of a sudden be living and working from the same space day in, day out, we become acutely aware of the environment we're in. And I would love to know, I'd love to start there, of where are you seeing your clients, things shifting now that people have all of a sudden gone from having a separate work environment and a home environment. Now they're needing to merge the two.
I think it's just been a complete change of lifestyle for a lot of people. And whether they've now started to go back to the office part-time or whether they've decided to work from home, but it was a very definitive, this has changed everything for a lot of people, whether you do run your own businesses or not. And in our sort of, when we're working with clients, we tend to talk a lot about the three environments that people have. So, obviously one of your environments is the home environment that you live in. So whether it is cluttered or you've got the laptop on the kitchen table or, whatever that may be, but those types of environments tend to bleed into your internal environment. So they cause you stress. You could feel overwhelmed. Every time you walk past that pile of paperwork on the sideboard and, you forgot to send that email and you're trying to cook the kids dinner and, all that sort of stuff accumulates and just builds up and builds up. And when you can't leave the house and you can't escape to the office, or, you know, the room at the end of the garden, or whatever it might be, it can have a really detrimental impact on you on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, your internal environment and your home environment go hand in hand, really, I think. And then obviously there's, you know, the world environment as a whole. So obviously that completely changed dramatically. And it's how you know, you can change certain things and little elements in your space that can just have a positive impact on all of those different things, I think.
And it's really interesting you say about, because I really want to dive into the three environments that you mentioned, because you touched on there about sort of, you know, the pile of paperwork being that kind of sort of little micro stress. And I literally, as soon as you said that, I'm like, God, yeah, there's a pile of stuff on top of my microwave, which just seems to be growing and growing and growing. And we don't think about it, do we? We just sort of pass it, and it's almost like, oh, I've got to sort that out. But I've got to sort that out every time you see it. Yeah. That's really going to affect your inner well-being.
Yeah. And I think half the battle is deciding to do something about it, because, you know, you, like you say, everybody's busy. You know, you've got a busy life. You let things slide on a day-to-day basis, and you've got to prioritize certain things, and you think, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll sort that out next week, or well, I'll you know, this weekend we're going to get that done, and then it doesn't happen. And I think having that, you know, decision made of gone, right, now we've really got to do something because this is driving me up the wall. You have to sort of make a plan for yourself of what you actually want to achieve. You know, you need to think about your daily routine. You know, are you constantly, you know, how you move through the house and where you dump things, and do the kids come in and chuck their sports bags by the front door, and is that causing you stress? And I mean, when we first work with a client at our initial meeting, we always say, please don't tidy up before we come. Because it's really important. It sounds silly, but, you know, the first thing you do when somebody's going to come in the house is you just sort of tidy up and put things in cupboards and have a bit of a spruce up. But I think it's, for us, we can walk in a space and go, oh, okay, that's where, you know, and they drop the post in the morning, or the keys live there, or, you know, there's absolutely no good changing your entire environment if it doesn't feed into your daily lifestyle. There's just ways you can design the space to fit in with that lifestyle better. And that's the way we tend to tackle it, really, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that, I'm sure I was nodding along when you're like, I'll do it this weekend and I'll get that sorted. And then the weekend goes and you're like, I still didn't sort it. Yeah. I mean, even as you've been talking, I was like, right, when we finish this, I'm going to sort out that pile of paperwork. I won't. I'll crack on with my emails and do some work, and it'll go another week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you, let's talk about the three environments, because I think it would be great to give the listeners some ideas on how to even start tackling this. So if we start with, well, we can start wherever you like, but you mentioned there the sort of the internal environments, and you've got the home, and then obviously the world environment as a whole. Where would you like to start in what we can do to sort of help those three environments?
Well, I think, you know, a great place to start is your internal environment, because you need to be, it's just about being self-aware, really, and just conscious of what is it that's causing you, whether it's stress, whether it's overwhelm, you know, whether it's disappointment, you know, your home isn't how you wanted it to be, or expected it to be, or thought it would be by a certain age, or what, you know, whatever it is. We've all got, you know, preconceptions of, you know, what we want our house to be like. But sometimes it's something, you know, maybe that's more difficult to pinpoint. It could be almost like a lack of identity. So, you know, your home really should tell the story of who you are. Somebody should be able to walk into your house and go, they love books, or, you know, they must be a huge movie lover because they've got, you know, the cinema TV and the big comfy sofas, or whatever it is, you know, trinkets from around the world if you've traveled, or artwork if you're a painter. And if you walk into your house and go, well, I don't feel any connection with this space because this doesn't feel like me, it can sort of, you know, lower your self-esteem a little bit as well. And, or if, you know, we've had clients who've been together a long time and then they've separated, moved into two different houses, and whether they've divvied up the furniture or got new furniture or haven't got any furniture, and you sort of like, well, what is this space that I'm living in? It's not, I don't recognize it. So I think just to even just sit with it for a bit, or, you know, as you're going through your daily routine through your house, just notice what it is And it's almost like a physical response that you'll have to certain things in your home, whether it's, something that's not practical that is pissing you off, or, something that's ugly or not to your taste that you really don't like, or, the carpet's 15 years old and it's driving you mad and you want to replace it with something. There will be something. And just to sort of make a little mental note, that needs to change, or, well, if we got rid of that, I'd be happier, or, well, I haven't got enough storage for all of my clothes, and then they end up in a pile on the end of the bed. And, it's whatever, everybody's different. They all have their little quirks and vices and habits and stuff. But I think internal environment's definitely the place to start, because then you know what it is that needs to change, really.
Yeah. And how do you, because I mean, that really resonates for me, because when I sold my property, when my husband and I got divorced, I moved into a new one, and I was just like, right, I'll be here for a year, let this pandemic thing float past and figure out what the world's doing, and then I'll move. And of course, 18 months later, I'm like, I'm not moving, I can't be dealing with that again. But I then look around the house and go, I've got all the old furniture. It's not old furniture, but I've got all the furniture from my marriage. And I'm like, and I'm having this massive, I want to gut everything and start all over again moment. So for people that are, how do you help your clients, whether they're thinking, do you know what, there's this, when they come to you and like, Jenny, this is this one room, it drives me crazy, help me sort it out, or whether they're just like, everything. They're just like, Jenny, help me. Like, they don't, as soon as they walk in through the door, they're just like, oh, because I think listeners I really feel what you say, that you can sometimes walk into your home and just be like, oh, it just immediately lowers your vibration, because you're just like, oh, it doesn't work, or it doesn't flow, or it's cluttered, or something is frustrating you about it. So how do you approach things when your clients are coming to you with that kind of problem?
Well, the first thing is to think of and take a look at what exists already. What is the state of your space? What's the size, shape, location, style, whatever it might be? What existing furniture do you have? Because as a studio, we don't like to buy things unnecessarily. We don't want to, spend clients' money on new sofas if you don't need new sofas, that sort of stuff. So, and quite often, when we take an inventory of what clients have already got, they'll already have pieces of furniture, whether it's they've inherited them or whatever, that might work, or maybe it'll work in a different room, or it's, we can sort of jazz it up. Or so I think looking at what have you've got existing already, and then at the opposite end of the scale, what is it that you really want? What is it that you desire? Do you want to host dinner parties for 10 people, but you've only got a table for 4? Or, do you want to have a reading corner in the evening so you can listen to some quiet music in the background and, read a novel, or lose yourself in a bit more work if you're writing, or whatever, and then you fill in the gap between of what's already existing, what is it that we desire, and then what is possible. What is your budget? Because nobody's budget is ever limitless. And what's sensible for the property? Are you going to live there for 12 months? Are you going to live there for the next 20 years? How old are the children, if there's children in the property? That you've got to think about the progression of how they grow up and move around the space, and their different needs and all that sort of stuff. And it's really compiling this complete, we call it design brief, of what you need your house to do and how you want it to look and feel, and just build a picture of that. And that's the starting point for everything. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. You just start from where you are, and just build from there. I think just sort of piece it together.
Yeah. And because I've definitely been guilty of this. I'm sure plenty of people listening to this would be that I have a moment of, I don't like it. So I then just go out and buy loads of random stuff that just looks pretty. And then I put that on, and then a month later I'm like, I don't like that either. So how do you help your clients? Because I'm looking at the background on this Zoom for those of you who get to watch this on the YouTube channel, but it's just beautiful. And I'm like, I love this dark horse. I love this. But I am quite impulsive. How do you help clients who kind of say, Jenny, I want to do this, and I want to do this pattern? And you're like, that's because they saw it in a magazine. They're going to hate it in 3 months' time.
A lot of restraint. Yeah, it is tricky, because the beautiful things are the fun bits of the project to do. Everybody loves to, we sometimes take our clients to the design centre down in Chelsea, and they walk in the showrooms and go, and we do that as well. It's brilliant, but it's just the surface level of everything, and the foundation of the design of a room is the practicality of it. There's a definite process. It's a really analytical process that we go through of the design brief comes first, then the concept design, then we build on that and look at the furniture layouts, and then we put the lighting design before we've even looked at fabric or colours or textures, none of that. It's 5% of almost at the end of what we do. And then we start putting the schemes together and the colours and all that sort of stuff. So it is really just self-restraint, and the problem is if you do go out and buy something and you've spent money on it, then there's almost a guilt associated with getting rid of it or letting go of it, or, well, I've bought it now, so I'll keep it. Or, if somebody's just moved into a new house, they go, right, I need a bed, I need a sofa, I need a table, and they go to IKEA or wherever, and they go, well, it'll do for now. We need a sofa, it'll do for now, and then we'll sell it on Facebook or eBay and they don't, and they have the same sofa for 15 years, 20 years. Well, it's fine, it's comfy and it fits everybody on, and it's not what they wanted. And if they'd have just hung back maybe another month or whatever it might be, or just made do with some odd bits of furniture, to really find the pieces that they love, because then if you fill your home with the stuff that you love, every time you walk in that door, whether it's messy or not, you're like, oh, this is home. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend a lot of money. I mean, one of my favourite things in our house is a mirror that I found in the Hungerford arcade, and it was like stacked behind all of these pictures, and it was a £5. It's the most beautiful, heavy, old oak mirror. And I couldn't believe it when he said it was £5. I just think, oh my God, it's amazing. And you hang out for we've lived in our house for over 12 months now. We moved in on the 1st of March last year, and I still haven't got a mirror in my bathroom because I haven't found the right one yet. And that's fine. I'll just, it's not the easiest thing to get ready in the morning. We've got one on the landing that I use to do my hair, but
that makes me feel so much better, because 18 months in, I still don't have a mirror in my bathroom.
Never got it. No, because I refused. I know what will happen. I'll just go out and buy one, and then it won't be one that I want. So I've got in my mind the mirror that I need for that bathroom, and when I've got time to go and find it, I'll go and buy it. But up until then, I'll just have to make do with it.
It's amazing. I mean, that really shows the difference between the professional approach, and this is why people hire you and your company, rather than us trying to do it ourselves and just go, I'll just go to Dunelm and I'll buy the prettiest thing I see, or I've seen that thing in a magazine, I'm going to put leopard print everywhere and that's what I want, or whatever that trend might be. When I used to work in weddings, it used to drive me crazy. These people would, brides would be like, oh, I want a really unique wedding, and then they basically tell me exactly the same as every other bride has had. I'm like, oh God, it's going to be more, flowers in jam jars and ribbons, and it's not. It's just, that's the trend. It's not unique. Like, stop looking at the magazines and have your own wedding.
Yeah, it's the same with interiors. Everybody wants an Instagrammable interior, or they'll have a corner of their house where they always do their Zoom calls from, or whatever. It just happens to be staged that way, which is perfectly fine if it's functional. But if it's not functional, then there's no purpose to it. It's just, it's the same. It's the same with interior.
So moving from the internal, so you speak to your clients, and I'm sure people can resonate. I certainly do with that sort of walking around your house. And I mean, I did it. I used to have to squeeze past my sofa to get to the other part of the room. I was like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. I couldn't lift my shopping bags through the room because I had to get past the sofa. Absolutely crazy. So, let's say for everyone listening that they've kind of gone around their house and gone, right, these are the things that are starting to bug me. How do you then help people with the home environment to start making it work better for them?
Yeah, I mean, like what you just said about squeezing in between furniture, that is so common. You would not believe. And just the wrong sizes of things, or the wrong shapes of things, or pushing furniture back against the wall. You end up creating these corridors of through your house. You might just not even use a room because it's the room that you walk through to get to the kitchen. But yeah, the home environment, I think, it's got to be practical. First and foremost, it's got to be practical for what you need it for. If you've got a spare bedroom for guests and you never have any guests and you're cramped over your kitchen table doing your work, what are you doing? You just don't design your house for other people. I mean, I've got this with my mum at the minute. They're going to build like an annex for them to live in, and I said, you just need one bedroom. And she said, yeah. Well, what if, people come to stay? And I went, okay, in the last, let's say 5 years, because obviously it's in COVID, how many people have visited? And she's reeling off all these people. And I went, how many people have stayed with you? How many people have actually slept over and stayed? And I think it was maybe 5. So you want to build a whole extra bedroom for those 5 occasions in the last 5 years that people have come to stay. And yeah, I think, designing your house for you and as you live now, because we tend to sort of look into the future and try and predict, well, I might sell it in 2 years. So therefore, I'll just paint everything neutral and then it'll appeal to a buyer, because that doesn't happen. That's not the way people buy houses. People buy lifestyles, not properties. So you have to show how you live in a house for them to want to buy it. And yeah, just starting from there, really, I think clutter is a huge problem for so many people, and it's not anything to be ashamed of, or a lot of the clutter that comes into your house is not your fault. It'll be people buying your children birthday and Christmas presents. I mean, where do you put all that? Or buying you gifts, or I don't know. It's you've got to just learn to let things go. I think it's your home's got to be practical, but it's also got to represent who you are. So making that mental checklist of every room in your house, does it have a purpose? Does it fit with what you need to use it for and the other people that live with you? If you've got kids who are doing homework, would they prefer and utilize a desk in their bedroom more, or are they just going to sit there and play video games and they really should be downstairs at maybe a desk in the dining room, or whatever it might be? And then that comes back to that self-awareness again of you and your family. And quite often you have to have these conversations, because you could have lived with somebody for 10 years and not really know how they want to live in a space, which sounds ridiculous, but it's so common. We have couples who sit at our table when we have an initial meeting, and we had one recently, and a lovely, lovely couple, and the chap said, well, I'd really like an armchair. I love armchairs. We don't have any armchairs in the house. And his wife looked at him and she went, really? You really like armchairs? He went, yeah, I just want a really nice, big, comfortable armchair to read in. And she went, we haven't even got any books in the house. You don't read. And he went, yeah, but I really actually enjoy reading. I really want to sit in an armchair and read a book. She's like, well, I don't want you to have an armchair because I want to cuddle you on the sofa. He kind of just looked at me. Just like, I'm a cuddler. I really like cuddling. And I went, okay, let's figure out how we work around this one then. And yeah, so you just opening that dialogue of, well, how would you like to live in that? What do you want our daily routine to be? Because it does change depending on what your home environment is. It's phenomenal how people will try and fit into their houses rather than have their houses fit around them.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the statement for the podcast, I think, because that is just, I think we all do that. And I remember when we first met, you shared a story about a couple, and you went in, and I think it was about books as well. And they were like, oh, I love to read. This is the room I read in. And there wasn't a book in the room. He had to go into the garage or something and go and get his books. I was just like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's, we all do that kind of stuff. And I mean, that story that you did share. And I think it's interesting when you think about the furniture that you're choosing. And I know you help your clients with that. And I think it might have even been the same couple. You said that they wanted all their DVDs in a unit, but they never watched DVDs. They just thought, well, we own them, so we need to put them in a unit.
Well, and that comes back to the guilt as well. They had stacks and stacks of DVDs, and she said, we're big movie lovers. We really love watching movies. And I said, that's great. So every time you want to watch a movie, do you go and choose a DVD? I said, well, no, we just watch Netflix or, streaming or whatever it is. But the purpose of my visit initially was to go and talk to them about designing a piece of furniture to put the TV on that would house all of these DVDs. Wow. And by the end of the meeting, they didn't need a piece of furniture to put the TV on to house all the DVDs because they didn't need the DVDs. Yeah. It was just, but it's not until... it's that classic thing, isn't it? You can't see your own shit. So you need somebody to sort of bounce off. And whether that is a designer or an architect or even just the person that you live with to go, oh, yeah, actually, no, what were we thinking? We don't actually need that, do we? I had another lady the other day who said, so the kids have moved their craft area from the dining room now, and there's a space there. So we want a couple of sofas. And I said, okay, are you going to sit there? And she sort of looked at me like it was a stupid question at first. And then it was like, oh, actually, that's actually a sensible question. Are we actually going to sit there? And I said, well, we can buy you sofas. We can choose the fabric. But are you actually going to sit on them? She went, well, I don't know. And I said, well, you need to go away and think about what else could you put in that space that you might actually need that wall for. If you've got another seating area, what's your routine when you have guests over and you have dinner parties or whatever it might be, Sunday lunches? Would you sit there and have a coffee or a pre-dinner drink or post-dinner drink, or would you congregate in the kitchen? And she said, well, no, we've got a family room we use, and then we've got a separate lounge, like the posh lounge that we would host evening drinks in. She said, so I probably wouldn't use it actually for seating. But she could have gone out and spent, I don't know, $6,000 on 2 new sofas without needing to. She could put something else there. So we're gonna talk more about what she actually needs that corner for now. But it is just, it's that thing, isn't it? Like, well, there's a vacant space. I need to put something in it. What should I put there?
And that's such a good point, because I know when we moved the first time, we went from a bedsit in all essence, a bedsit, which I freaking loved. I love a small space. I am very happy. I'm like, once the kids have moved out, I'm like, me in a lovely apartment, I will be very, very happy. Less cleaning, less maintenance, brilliant. So we moved from a bedsit to a small 2 up, 2 down, and we had nothing. But we managed to fill it. And then we moved to a 4-story, 3-bedroom house with all our furniture, which looked like nothing, and we filled it. So what is that about? Why are we so obsessed with going, well, there's a space, we better put, because I absolutely would have been that woman going, well, a sofa would look pretty, let's go buy a sofa. So what possesses us to do that?
There is, it comes back to psychology again. And I think it's called something like Parkinson's law or something. There is an actual name for it where you expand to fill the space that you're in. And it's the same with, kitchens. So in our last house, we had quite a, modest sized kitchen. And now we've moved into a bigger kitchen and all this stuff. And I didn't even buy new stuff. It sort of spread out, the dishes weren't as crammed into the cupboards, and you just sort of expand to fill the space. And it's for everybody. I think they do that. How could you possibly have an empty room? It's just finding the purpose of it. I think everything's got to have a purpose. Otherwise, what's the point? More stuff to clean.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big fan of a small space as well. I think, like those little micro homes and stuff, they fascinate me. It's just, and I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, it's like when you go on holiday and you pack in your suitcase what you need and only what you need. You don't, like, even shampoo, you know how much shampoo you're going to use. I mean, I don't know whether you're as anal as I am about it, and you feel free from it. You're free from all of that shit and stuff because you've only got with you what you need. And so why don't we live like that? Why do you have all this extra shit in your house that you don't need? Obviously minimalism is always going to be a huge trend. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to strip back everything. It's just being more consciously aware of it. And, do you love it? Do you need it? If the answer is no to both of those questions, why is it in your house? And then just finding a sort of sustainable way of moving it on, whether it's charity shop or selling it and spending the money on shoes or I don't know, whatever it is.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, that leads on to sort of the third environment being the world environment really nicely, because I certainly have become far more aware of, firstly, what I'm buying and where I'm buying it from, what it's made of and all that stuff. But also that feeling of, if I'm buying something, making sure I'm like, am I going to actually love this in 3 weeks, 3 months, a year's time? Because when I think about, I mean, I have a garage full of stuff. Again, one of those things on my list that one weekend I will get through. But I just think, my gosh, the amount of money I have spent on just stuff, because I've kind of gone, oh, I'm bored with this room. And so I'm going to redo it. And I now just have the accumulation of stuff. And from an environmental point of view, that's not great. Really not great. And again, I've not got rid of it because I'm just like, well, it's, guilt of getting rid of things, but also like, kind of, well, where do I do it? I don't want to just skip it. I don't want to shove it down the tip because that's horrendous. So when you're working with clients, let's talk about that third environment, the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And guilt is just, it's just there. It's a huge cloud hanging over everybody nowadays. I mean, one of my friends posted something the other day, and it was about electric cars. Where do they get the lithium for the electric cars? People aware of where that comes from, where that's mined. And I thought, oh, that interests me a little bit. So I read a bit about it, and it was like, yeah, but do you know where all the stuff comes that goes inside your mobile phone as well? And everybody's walking around with a mobile phone. Nobody really talks about it because, well, we all need a mobile phone. Whereas with your home, you're not allowed to not be conscious of it. You're guilted into it, because otherwise you don't care about the environment. And that's not true at all. I mean, I would ask any of my clients, of course, they all care about the environment. Majority of us have got children or grandchildren, or you don't want to leave it in a worse mess than it was when you got here. But it's just there's information overload on everything, and lots of greenwashing, and it's almost where people get to the point of decision fatigue, because there's all this information coming at you and you're trying to figure out where the best places are to source things from, or how to dispose of something, or is it recyclable, or whatever it may be. And you go, actually, I'm just not going to do anything about it, and you get decision paralysis, and then the garage stays full for the next 12 months or so. But it's just baby steps. It's like eating an elephant. It's not the whole thing at once. Maybe go in there and take any books and donate them to the charity bookshop, or little tiny steps, I think is the key to getting rid of stuff.
To your point of, just for those that haven't heard that phrase before, because I know it was something, I think the very first time I met you that I'd heard that term, greenwashing. What does that mean? How is that showing up?
It's basically so the government guidelines for anything like organic, eco-friendly, green, they're very vague. It's something like something only has to have 3% natural ingredients to be classed as natural, or some. There's all these. It's the same with cosmetics and makeup, and same with paint companies and all that sort of stuff. And it's just being aware of it. And if something's got green or eco or sustainable on the label, it doesn't mean that it's green, eco, or sustainable. And what does that even mean anyway? And just it is sort of time consuming to do your background reading on stuff. But I used to be the world's least favorite designer when my reps came in, because they'd come in, this was years ago when I first set up, and they'd come in and show me all these fabrics or whatever it might be really excited to show me the new collection. And then I'd ask them how it was manufactured, or how were the leather hides tanned, or did they know where the leather was being sourced from, and they'd look at me with blank faces and go, oh no, it's fine, we're an eco company, we plant trees and we offset our carbon. But that's not what I asked you. I asked you, do you know if there's any child labour in the Indian factories where you're getting these rugs made? Or they didn't know, and it's they're not as bad now. There are a lot more companies doing amazing things, but greenwashing is a huge problem in the industry, particularly with things like paints. I mean, that's just horrendous. You walk into B&Q or wherever you would normally buy your paint from, and the eco section, and this paint is VOC free, which is like volatile organic compounds, which is the stuff that off gases, that like new paint smell. Really bad for humans, really bad for the environment. But it's got green on the label, so it's fine. It'll be fine. And it's really not. And there's big paint companies out there, and you go on their website and they've got whole pages on their website of how eco and green and sustainable they are. And actually you ask them what the ingredients are in their paint, which I have done. And they won't tell you, and they don't have to tell you. And it's infuriating because, especially as a designer, we've got a conscious liability that we need to, give our clients the best advice. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear. But thankfully there are amazing paint companies out there. Like Graphene Stone is one of my favourites, that they've got every single ingredient on every single label, and they will tell you till the cows come home how their paint's manufactured. And there are companies out there doing amazing things, but there are a lot of companies out there doing not so amazing things and getting away with it.
Wow. I suppose, that's the joy of working, if people are going to work with you, because you have that knowledge, you have that, and like that paint, I've never heard of that. I am someone who will go to B&Q and just choose the paint. It's really interesting because it's so hard to tell. And that's where having an industry expert like yourself to be able to say, actually, this is a company that you probably wouldn't have necessarily heard of, but they are good. Or, these fabrics have been manufactured to a high standard and haven't involved this, that, and the other. And, it's a whole different world.
It is. And we're constantly learning, Emily, who works with me, is one of her sort of weekly tasks, is to do research on up and coming new suppliers, or always keeping our toe in and our ear to the ground of new developments. And it's forever changing, like any industry, isn't it? But I think.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think you've got to have a positive relationship with your home. And it's got to be that place where you live in your home, you recuperate in your home. When you're sick, you invite friends and family into your home. That's your space. So if sustainability is important to you and the world environment is important to you, it's important that all of those things sort of contribute to that positive space that you live in. And it's not only that, but from a health perspective as well. Our homes are making us sick.
That was exactly where I was going, because I just thought, I know we hadn't discussed this, but I was like, actually, I used to find if I used to buy, back in the day when we first had our beds, I'd get the cheap candles and then wonder why I was sneezing every time they would burn. I'm like, oh God, what's in this? Yeah. So, that's just that's the only thing I really know about. So how are our houses making us sick?
Well, fire retardant materials are horrendous, awful. And they're everything, your sofas, mattresses, but basically anything you spend any amount of time on, sitting on or lying on, has probably got some sort of fire retardant chemical embedded into it. And that's not good because it's getting into your system. So thankfully there are a couple of companies that do, fire retardant back coating with more natural chemicals, materials now. But ultimately you want to try and choose more naturally fire retardant materials like wool. Wool doesn't need to be fire retardant because it already inherently is, so it doesn't need to be treated. So wool mattresses. But then, of course, you've got to think of where wool comes from. Obviously, they use sheep dip, which is horrendously toxic. And if it's all very complicated. It's not really complicated. It's just a lot to think about, which is where that overwhelm comes in again. But if the sheep have been dipped recently to being sheared, those chemicals are still in the wool. And then the wool gets spun and turned into yarn and then stuffed into mattresses or however they're made. Those chemicals from the sheep dip or from the fly spray or, whatever it is that they've used on the sheep are still there. And then you're inhaling that, breathing that, it's soaking into your skin, that sort of stuff. So not all wool mattresses are created equal either. So there's another sort of sidestep hurdle that you've got to sort of get around. But good ethical companies will have all the company literature and be completely open. And I think that's the only thing you've got to consider is the company that you're inquiring with about buying a sofa or a mattress or a carpet or whatever it is. Are they being open with you when you ask questions, and do they know the answers to them? And then you know that you're onto a good company then and onto a good product.
God, it's a minefield, isn't it? As you were talking, I was literally going through my house and I'm like, everything has got that little flame retardant label on it, hasn't it? And
it isn't actually relevant anymore because nobody smokes in houses now. And that's when it came in is, back in the day when everybody used to smoke in bed or sitting on the sofa. Then a cigarette match test is the sort of basic level of fire retardancy, and then it goes right up to crib 5, which is like for commercial properties and stuff. Soft furnishings like curtains and cushions, separate accessories don't need to be fire retardant, but basically anything you sit on or lie on does.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is there anything people can do? Because I think, like I said, everything's got that little tag on it. I think that I own. So for those that are listening, are like having a bit of a moment of, oh my goodness, is there anything they can do to keep the health of their home sort of as optimal as they can?
It's just natural choices moving forward. So obviously, unless you're going to, skip everything out of your house and start from fresh, next time you're due to buy a new mattress, just be more conscious of where you get it from, where you source it from, and what materials are in it, and using sort of natural bed linens and things like that can have a massive impact. You can actually get mattress covers that shield you from your own mattress, which sounds ridiculous, but they do. And same with sofas, when it's at the end of its life cycle or you're replacing it with something else, just be more conscious of where you choose it from. Do your research first, I guess.
And so would putting, more natural covers or throws or things over your sofa, would that make any difference, or is it a bit too late really?
I think anything that gives you that separation. It's like what was that film called that came out a few years ago, and it was about Teflon, the company. Have you seen that film?
No.
Well, if anything like that, don't watch it.
I was going to say, it sounds like the sort of thing that would absolutely terrify. I'd be living just on a bamboo board and that's it.
It is. It really is. It's this company in America, and so Teflon, they trademarked it as their brand name, but basically it was designed as a carbon compound that they would coat tanks in so that the mud wouldn't stick to the tanks. So it was a non-stick material. And then they thought, this is great. It's a non-stick material. Let's put it on everything. So they put it on cookware and clothing. If you've been to an outdoor clothing shop and it's got like the Teflon tag, non-stick stuff. Yeah. And this guy found out about it, this lawyer found out about it because it was making everybody sick. And the figures are incredible. I think it's something like 99% of the world's population have got this Teflon non-stick coating inside their bodies. Wow. Because this one company. And what's worse is it's not illegal. They didn't stop them from making it. So if you've got a frying pan that's non-stick, get rid of it. Wow. There are more sustainable, healthier options out there. I think the chemical compound is called PFOA. PFOA. It's a awful, horrible, terrible thing that.
Gosh, just makes you want to run away with a tent and live in a field, really.
Yeah, it's not great, but unless when you don't know, when you know better, you do better, as Maya Angelou said. Yeah. I think it's just putting all that information out there so people can just do their own research, and to whatever degree they want to, change their environments, then that's up to them.
Yeah. God, that's an area I didn't think we were going to go into, but it's really, really interesting. And I hope we haven't terrified you all with listening to that. But I think it's almost like the same with, I think we've got a very good awareness, whether we make the right choices or, sensible choices or not. When it comes to food, we're very aware of actually the food with a long old list of things which don't sound like food. Don't eat them. They're not nourishing. There's nothing good in there for you. But I wouldn't think twice. It's so funny. I was actually talking, I'm looking at my pans because I'm in my kitchen. I'm just like, what are you coated with, I wonder?
Yeah, it is a bit of a minefield, but that's the state of the planet that we've got it to, I think. And as people become more aware, I didn't know any of this stuff years ago before I started working in the industry, but it's following that thread, isn't it? You think about one thing and then you think, well, I wonder if that other thing is the same, or it's almost like this breadcrumb trail of, well, I want to find out about that now, and I want to find out about that now, and our homes are making us sick. We spend, I think the figures are something like pre-COVID figures, so before pandemic, before we were all stuck inside our houses, we were spending 86% of our time indoors, whether it was the house, the office, and then it was something, a further sort of 6% in transport, so in a car, in a bus, in an aeroplane. And humans are not designed to spend that amount of time in anything. We are supposed to be outdoors and getting fresh air. And it's the way we live has changed dramatically, and it's really affecting us. And I think that's where our job as interior designers, yes, we design the insides of houses, but actually we want you to go outside of your house to live your life and then come back in, and it be a restful, lovely sanctuary for you to recover in, and then off you go again,
Yeah. And with sort of as we sort of come to the end of this episode, you mentioned something earlier which I meant to ask you about. What is the difference between an interior designer and an architect, and is there like an overlap? Because I just wonder if, knowing you now and knowing the depths of what you do and how much stuff you go into, for people that are thinking, or having extensions done, or actually maybe they're like, oh, do you know what, the inside of the house is all right, but the garden, every time I look at that, makes me sad. What's the difference between the two, and how do you sort of work within that field?
Yeah, so interior designers are probably halfway in between an architect and an interior decorator. So in America, you have to be fully qualified to call yourself an interior designer. If you're not qualified and you're not registered and accredited, then you're an interior decorator. In the UK, there's no such rule. So anybody can basically call themselves an interior designer, which is a bit of a shame. But, we're trained to think practically, and, we have to know our building regs and all that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily sign off on building drawings like an architect would. So architect focuses more on the actual construction of a building, and works quite closely with the contractor to make sure, the materials are what they need to be and everything is structurally very sound. And then, of course, the look of the building and the flow of the building. Whereas we tend to focus on how people live in the building. So things like daily routines, how many people live in there, how many people do we need to seat around a dining table, and, all the practical elements. And yeah, of course, how it looks as well. But the way that there's a crossover is things like joinery design. So, our architects might design kitchens and bathrooms and where to put the plumbing and stuff. But then we would focus on, say, for a bathroom, for example, an architect might do the plumbing drawings, but then we would go in there and go, well, actually, they like to bath together. So we're going to give them a double-ended freestanding bath. That therefore, we're going to have to move it there. And could we maybe take that wall out and put the sink over there? And they want a double vanity because that's how they live. So we definitely work in sync with architects. And I think if you are thinking about a project, the earlier you can get a designer on board, if you're going to use one, the better. Because quite often, we've had inquiries in the past where they've had an architect draw the house or the extension, and then you get in there and start asking lots of questions, and then quite quickly realise what they've had designed, and unfortunately sometimes it's half built by then, doesn't actually fit with what they need it to. You know, they've put an extension on because they need more space, but then they haven't thought about how they're going to use the space or what they're going to use it for. And then they just buy furniture to fill it because they've got an extra space to fill. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover. And, you know, good architects and good designers work really well together. I would never try to design the exterior of a building or, you know, a new house, or the amount of knowledge that architects have to have just in the back of their minds about a myriad of different things. Whereas interior designers are more sort of jack of all trades. You know, we know about fabrics, we know about curtains, we know about carpets and materials and all that sort of stuff, and joinery design, lighting design, a little bit of building regs, and just sort of a general overview of everything that goes into a house. And whether you need to bring an expert in to talk more in depth about the AV design or, you know, audio visual, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's where we just client advisors, really, I guess. Yeah, in a very general sense.
And I think that's a really great point. I had no idea that in America there was a difference between an interior decorator and interior designer, and that's not the same over here. Because I have to say, I was like, when we first met, you're like, I'm an interior designer. I was like, ooh, pretty things. And, you know, I'll be totally honest, I was like, yay, cushions and pretty things. I thought that's what interior design was. And it's only once I got to know, and I was like, holy cow, like this is a whole other ball game, which is why I was like, you just got to come off the podcast because this is going to help loads of people. Because I was like, no one thinks about this stuff. We just, exactly like you said. I mean, even so many things have sprung to mind. I hope they have for you guys listening, because even as I'm sat here on my massive table in my not so massive kitchen, because the massive table came from my other kitchen, I was like, I need to sell this and get a smaller table because it doesn't even fit in the room. And I just think I really hope that's given people some food for thought to maybe, even just as a bit of a fun exercise, exactly how you said, you know, don't try and do everything at once, but maybe just look around and think, you know, why is that in that place? Or, you know, why is the kettle one side of the kitchen, but the tea bags and cups are on the other side of the kitchen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it sounds really silly, but it's so true. That's one of the key things that we do before we get on to sort of all the, you know, the pretty stuff, is zoning and traffic flow. Because once we've got the furniture design set, you know, the furniture plan is how you're going to move through the space. You know, is your kitchen zoned as how you're going to use it? Age of clients, you know, we've got clients who are older who can't really bend down that well, or, you know, they're 5'2" and can't reach the top shelf, or whatever it might be. Thinking about how you use the space, and could it be better? Generally 9 times out of 10 the answer is yes. And then how can you make it better? Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's going to be one of those things of like, this is what I'm going to do all weekend. I know we're seeing each other on Friday, and I'm like, it won't happen because I'll be all in a buzz about the mastermind on Friday, and then I'll just work all weekend. But I'm like, this is the plan at the moment in my head. Jenny, it's been such a joy. I could talk to you for hours. How can people find your work, get in touch, learn more about your company?
Well, on social media, we are at the StudioJQ, which is our I don't know what you call it. It's not your hashtag, is it?
Handle.
And that's it. Our handle, social handle is at the StudioJQ. The website is just studiojq.co.uk. We tend to just share little tidbits on social media, and we'll do tips on stories and things like that. I'm in the process of actually writing some posts for our website, because we tend to get asked the same questions over and over again. So I host workshops in the studio sometimes, and I tutor as well, and it's always the same set of questions that people have, a lot about, you know, lighting design and things like that. And I thought, well, I'll stick some in a document, and then it's just easier for people to find it then. So that's one of the things that's on my to-do list to do.
That's amazing. And I mean, gosh, lighting, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? It makes such a difference, such a difference. And it's just been so good. I really hope people have got some ideas that they can take away to help them. You know, I know we started the conversation very much at how to have that sort of work-life blend, and sort of have that sort of integration and work with the space that you're in. So I really hope, I mean, you've given me like so many ideas, so many things that I want to do. So I really hope the listeners have taken something away. And please do get in contact with Jenny. And once those documents are up and running, I'll be sure to share them on my socials as well and let people know that they're there, because I don't even know what light bulbs to buy most of the time. I'm like, do I buy warm? Do I buy bright? Do I buy this? I don't know. I just buy them and just see what happens and then wait until they run out, which is never nowadays. So I think those PDFs or those documents are going to be very, very popular, Jenny, once you get them up and running.
Good. Yeah, thanks. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Right, my lovelies, be sure to connect with Jenny and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, any resources and links mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would be so grateful if you would kindly share, subscribe, and leave a positive review so that the podcast can help and reach as many people as possible. Thank you again for listening. Have a gorgeous day, and I'll see you in the next episode.